Hi there, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about basic Linux commands on the big IP. So recently I was asked, hey, we are a Windows shop and we don't have a ton of Linux experience on our team, but we do have big IPs and we need to be able to administrate our big IP from the command line at times. And so what do we need? What do we need to know in order to really get around Linux? And I obviously recommend that if you do have a lacking or understanding of Linux in particular, I do recommend that you go out and get some training. There's plenty out there. But from a basic perspective, these commands that I have listed here are going to get you on your way. And honestly, they're the ones I use most often whenever I'm on the big IP in a command line. And so we're going to cover some of these in a demo here in just a moment, but the ones that I'm not going to cover, I just wanted to talk about briefly. Those are VI and VM. So these are editors, right? So you're not going to be editing files all that often on the big IP. And there are other editors like Nano as well. So we don't want to get into an argument over what the best Linux text editor is. But I commonly use Vim. And so there are plenty of articles out there on the internet on how to use these tools. Basically, they're just for creating files, editing files, and so on and so forth. Another one we're not going to talk about is netstat. So netstat is a command that's available on Windows. So if you're a Windows admin, you should be very familiar with that. Piping we're not going to talk about either because piping is used on Windows as well. We're going to be using that here in just a moment in a demo anyways. Let's see, find command. So the find command is very useful. Don't use it a ton in troubleshooting, so we're not going to cover it in this video, but I will put a link to a troubleshooting document at askf5.com so you can read a little bit further on the find command on big IP. Another one is the lsof command, another useful command when trying to find processes that are tied to deleted files that are consuming memory, hard disk space. It's a very useful command for finding those so that you can get rid of them, right? So if you've got a disk space issue and you can't figure out, you've deleted everything, but you can't figure out what's going on, Linux, sometimes the system will hold on to things, just doesn't want to let them go. So that's a useful command for finding out where those are. Some of the other ones, cd and ls, right? These are commands that you can use on a Windows box, but you're going to be using them on a big IP and on Linux as well. So that's why I have them listed here. So there is some crossover, right, from Windows to Linux. Some of these commands are available on both platforms. But I just wanted to list them because this really is, I mean, if you've got a good understanding of these, I think from a basic perspective, you can get in and start digging around and finding things on a big IP to troubleshoot. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and run some of these commands that I think are more important to understand and really know when it comes to troubleshooting the big IP. All right, let's head on over to the demo area. All right, so we're in the demo area. We are logged into a big IP in AWS, and this big IP is brand spanking new. It's got nothing on it. In fact, it has no nodes, no self IP, nothing. I just spun it up so I can get to the command line and show you what some of these commands look like. So the first one I want to run is top. And if I get over here and run top, oh, what happened? Unexpected argument. So if you were first logging into big IP, more than likely you were going to land on this shell. It's the TMOS shell. And you can see it's a TMOS shell because it's going to give you some information about the big IP. It's going to let us know we're on a standalone device. It's currently active. We're in the common partition. All right, so there are a couple ways to get to the bash. You could type bash, right? Bash takes you right to it. Now I'm in the bash shell. Or I can, let me go back to TMSH, I can run util bash. Does the same thing, right? So if you're looking at ask.f5 or askf5.com documentation that you're going to find out there, it's probably going to refer to run util bash. I just type in bash because I'm lazy and that's what lazy engineers do. So either one works, whatever you want to do. So let's run top again, and this time it actually runs, right? So we're not going to get into top because top is fairly complicated in terms of what's on the screen. Once you understand what everything means, should be fine, but some of the more important things are learning and knowing what the load averages are, and then learning what US, SY, WA, HI, all of those other things are and what they mean, because it becomes very important later on when you're trying to troubleshoot why your big IP may be acting up or not performing as it should. All right, so let's get out of that. So top command is a very, very important one. The next one that you're going to be using quite often is cat. And you want to use cat with the pipe. And I mentioned pipe earlier. Pipe is a command that you can use on PowerShell or on Windows as well. So you're probably familiar with it. In this case, cat is just going to read the varlog LTM file to the screen. But we don't want to read the entire file. We want to use the flag or the hook less so that we can page through it. And so I've hit enter. Instead of reading out the entire file real quickly, I can now hit the space bar and I can page through the log file, right? So useful. I wouldn't recommend you do this on a busy machine because your log file would probably be pretty large. You can see how many pages we have here, and I just spun this box up, right? A lot of this has to do with the boot up, right? So, but I would say that you'd want to SCP this off and look at it on your local machines. That way you can do some fine features or some fine, if you're looking for particular log file or keywords, you can do it much easier on your local machine. All right, so another one that you're going to use quite often is the tail feature or utility. And we're going to use the same file, LTM, if I could type correctly. And so what this does is it's going to tail the LTM log file, which is very useful when you're troubleshooting, right? So if you've got something written into an iRole and you're trying to log something, or you're looking for some kind of specific event happening in the log file, you can tail it while you're testing and see if it shows up in your log file instead of testing and then having to pull the file off or catting the file and then looking for it. You could see it fairly easily here. Again, if you have a busy system, probably not recommended. You can see a ton on your screen. Probably best then to just SCP the file off the box. All right, so let's get out of there. All right, curl. Curl is another one in my top, I would say 5 or 6 of tools you're going to be using. So if I were to start at top to bottom from an engineering or troubleshooting support perspective, I always start with ping, Telnet, curl, OpenSSL, and eventually TCP dump. And I usually follow that path, right? So if I get a ticket and I've got a server admin that says, my box is not working, something's happening, can I ping it? Is ICMP working? If it's not, all right, let's find out why. It's probably a firewall issue. All right, so that's fixed. Telnet, can I get to the port? Is it listening? No. Server admin, go check IIS. Have you configured port 443? No. All right, now it's fixed. Okay, I can Telnet. Then I start working. All right, curl. Maybe my health monitor's not working. Why isn't my health monitor working? Curl is a fantastic utility to use, right? To figure out what's going on with the application, what's being returned to the client. In this way, when you're writing and building out custom monitors, you can put in some curl filters to really get in deep and find out what's being returned from the server, whether it's in the body or the headers, right? And it maybe the receive string that the administrator gave you is not showing up in here, and then you can say, hey, Mr. Application Owner, Mr. Server Admin, we're not seeing the receive string that you told us should be in the monitor. Your monitor is failing, and that's why. So a very useful tool. Another great one, when you get a little bit more advanced and you start troubleshooting SSL or certificates, is OpenSSL, right? So if you're not familiar with OpenSSL, and same thing with curl, these are both very easy to use but somewhat complex utilities because there's so much that goes with them. So if you're an F5 administrator and engineer, I highly recommend that you dig in deep to curl, you dig in deep to OpenSSL, and you dig in deep to TCP Dump and Wireshark. because those tools are going to be the most often ones that you really need to use to really dig into application issues that are happening in your enterprise. So when you're on that call at 3 a.m. in the morning and you've got 200 people on a con call or bridge, and they're all looking to you for answers, you need to make sure that you understand how to use these tools to troubleshoot on the big IP. So this is a very common one that I've always used. So OpenSSL, SSL, or S_client, connect, and then let's connect to our Nginx server, right? And we're going to say 443, and then we're going to specify TLS.1. Oh, and it would help if I put the right IP address, right? All right, so right IP address, always a key. So you can see what's being returned from our OpenSSL command. You can see that we can see the CN, example.com. We can see that's a self-signed cert. We can see the chain. We can see the server certificate. We can see the cipher, right? Which is pretty important at times. We can see that it did accept on TLS version 1. And we can see some other things here that are very important. So this is a super helpful tool when trying to figure out what a server's returning, right? Maybe a certain path is not correct. Maybe the health monitor is failing, or clients are getting errors in their browsers. This is a helpful tool along with SSL Dump to try and troubleshoot and figure out what's happening on the application side. So let's clear out of OpenSSL. And I also say, hey, dig into OpenSSL because it's just not used for this. You can create keys, you can create CAs. It's a pretty robust utility and one that is often used on the big IP. Let's see, you know what, we'll just do Telnet because I mentioned it earlier and I don't know why I'm going to 127, but you know, like I said, if I'm troubleshooting an application on the big IP, this is generally where I go. I go ICMP, ping, I go Telnet, curl, and so on and so forth. So if I can connect to it, all right, then I know I obviously can get to it and the port is open. So very useful tool, not going to get much, it's very basic. And you can do this on a Windows machine as well. The history command. So history command is very useful. So when I'm busy on a machine and I maybe had to go out to the internet and get a specific command because I'm not an expert on Linux, you know, maybe I need an awk or a sed filter, something crazy that I've never used before, and maybe I typed that command in and I forgot about it and I need it later. Well, instead of going back out to the internet and searching again, I can just hit the type in history, and it'll show me the history of my commands that I've recently ran. So it's a super helpful, useful tool that I use pretty often. And the last one here that we're going to talk about is TCP Dump. And TCP Dump, and I'm just going to get into just a very basic command here that I use, or you know, I've always started with this command. And if we go 1.67, and so what we're doing is where we're disabling DNS lookup, we're specifying verbose. You know, we could go very verbose here. But we're not. I don't want to go back, but I'm listening on 0.0 interface, which is all interfaces. Don't do this if you're on a busy system. Always be very specific with your interface, so you can actually specify VLANs here if you wanted to. Specify the host, right? We can also go in and specify a port. And then we can write this if we wanted to, right? We could write this to var temp, and I always recommend you write it to var temp. Give it a name, so let's just say name.pcap, and then we can hit enter and we're listening, right? I don't have anything configured on this big IP. There's nothing, no self IPs, so I've got no health monitors, I got nothing, so I got no traffic, which is indicative of the reason why we're getting .0 packets. But if we did have a health monitor, we would see some packets here right now. Again, on a busy system, make sure that you are running this at a very specific filter, right? Because this will fill up very fast if you're on a very busy system. Something I will note as well, and I'll put this in the description, is that you may be asked by F5 support to run this particular filter. And these are very specific F5 flags that are used in a plugin in Wireshark to give us some ether trailers. And this gives us some more fine-grained detail of what's happening in the proxy. So you may be asked to run this particular. There's also the peer flag as well, but I don't believe that's used anymore. But I will throw that link into the description as well. All right, so that concludes. Again, the list is not exhaustive. These are very basic commands. If you go back to the beginning of the video and you take a look at that list, as long as you have a good understanding of those commands, I'm pretty confident that you can get around the big IP. And if you need to dig in further, such as with TCP Dump, OpenSSL, curl, I highly encourage you to do so, because those are more advanced tools that you really need a good handle on in order to effectively troubleshoot the big IP. So if there's anything I left out, if there's anything that maybe it was obvious that I left out, please let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to see something additional or maybe expand on something here that I talked about, also let me know in the comments. But until next time, I'll see you then.